Hey there. I bet if you're like me, you thought you knew the difference between fresh ground flour and flour that you get at the store, but I just learned this and I'm pretty sure you didn't know this either. So with flour that you buy from the store, if you even organic, even whole wheat, if you look at the ingredients, it always says enriched with. So they add in vitamins back in, usually says enriched with the specific vitamins, and that's organic, whole wheat, anything that we get that is store-bought flour or made with store-bought flour. Now, when you have a wheat berry, like we've got right here, so this is a jar of spelt wheat berries, and this is true for all wheat berries as well, all your different kinds of wheat. You've got 3 parts to a kernel of wheat, or what we refer to as a wheat berry. So you've got the endosperm, the germ, and the bran. So the germ and the bran are what contain, the germ contains the oils where a lot of the nutrients are. And then you also have the bran. And when you grind it up into flour, they remove the germ because that is oil and it will go rancid after time. So in order to make our flour shelf stable, they have to strip it, even if it's organic or whole wheat, they have to strip those items out so that it can ship and it has a longer shelf life and it's shelf stable. But did you know that there are over 10,000 phytochemicals that are included in the wheat within the germ and the bran that's removed back? And FDA regulations, or the government's regulations, so that we have flour that's not devoid of all nutrients, they only require putting back 3 or 4 of those vitamins back in the flour, which is why it always says enriched, because we've stripped out what nature and God has naturally put into our flour for convenience and in order to have it to be shelf stable. So we have to put some of those nutrients back in, but there's so many that naturally occur in science and nature, and science doesn't even know what all of these phytochemicals and all of these nutrients do yet, but we're only getting 3 or 4 back when there's up to 10,000 originally in our wheat. And I just learned that. I knew about the enriched vitamins, but I did not know that there was that many different phytochemicals that we're not being put back into our wheat, and we are losing when we buy our flour from the store. So hey guys, if you want to learn more about grinding your own flour at home and the differences in it, please share this. We're going to be talking all about using a mill today and how you can grind your own flours, including gluten-free and different items. It's not just about flour that you're going to be grinding at home. So please go ahead and share this. We're going to be talking about ancient grains, all things revolving around flour. So welcome. My name is Melissa K. Norris. I am the author of The Made from Scratch Life and the new book Handmade, as well as the host of the Pioneering Today podcast and the blogger at melissaknorris.com. So I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about a home mill. So grinding your own flour at home. What is the best wheat berry to use? Well, that's going to depend. And that is where using fresh ground flour is going to differ than if you're used to using whole wheat pastry flour from the store or even all-purpose flour. But if you have never cooked before or baked before with fresh ground flour, there is a definite difference. Now, it's a good difference. You are getting all of the nutrients packed into your flour. You are getting major flavors that you will never get off of the store shelf when you are grinding it fresh. So those are 2 awesome benefits right there. But there's such a vast diversity of all of the different flours that you can create for your baking that we lose when we purchase it from the store. So it depends. So some of the best ones to use, I prefer personally, if I am doing a pastry, so if I'm doing cakes and cookies and pie crusts and those type of things, then I personally prefer to use einkorn and spelt. So einkorn or spelt are considered ancient grains, and they don't have as much gluten in them. The form of gluten actually in them is different than the gluten that you have in modern wheat. So they do contain gluten, but it's an actually different form. So I just want to put that out there, but they have a lower form of the gluten when it comes, so gluten has its purpose when it comes to baking and in our wheat. So gluten is kind of the elasticity or what develops and gives bread its texture, and it gives it that rise, and we can get kind of the flakiness from it. So if I am baking bread, then I'm going to use hard white wheat. I actually prefer white wheat and hard white wheat for bread baking because it's got that structure to it. Whereas if I'm doing more pastry items, then I use spelt or einkorn, or you can use soft white wheat because you have differences in the protein that is in the flour, and that affects your different baked goods. And then you've also got the difference of the different levels of the gluten. And so it depends on what you're baking or cooking with what you're wanting. So like I said, spelt and einkorn are the ancient grains that I use. I use those the most, and I use those in all of my baked goods. So cupcakes, pie crusts, cakes, anything like that, I like to use those. And I also use them for pancakes, any type of thing like that. I do use hard white wheat if I am baking something that is yeast or that has a rise time or that I want to rise up. So think rolls or bread, those type of items. So it depends, like I said, on what it is that you're going to be cooking. And I really encourage people to try with all the different grains and see what you like the best. I do like to use red wheat for things that are a little bit more hearty, so to speak. So like tortillas or some of my flatbreads, I'll use red wheat for that. But my main wheats that I use are the hard white wheat, spelt, and einkorn. But with a home grain mill, you can do so much more than just what we typically think of is when we're making flours. So you can do gluten-free. I know a lot of people have sensitivities to gluten or going gluten-free for different health reasons. And so you can make your own gluten-free flours at home with a grain mill. And one of the advantages to that is if you purchase a grain mill and you only do gluten-free things in it, you know it is dedicated as long as what you're purchasing is certified that it's gluten-free. But you don't have that cross-contamination. And if you went to purchase gluten-free flours, y'all, you know how expensive they are, right? They can be really expensive when you start getting into those specialty flours and those different mixes, but you can make them all at home for much, much more cheaper by grinding them up. Plus, you get them fresh. So when anytime we grind up something and it's exposed to air, oxidation happens. And so from the minute it's ground up, it actually begins to lose its nutrients. It's kind of like when you take food off of the vine, it starts to slowly lose its nutrients. So when you can grind it up fresh and use it right away, you are way ahead of the game. And especially in the case of store-bought flour, well, all of those things are stripped out of it. So you can definitely do gluten-free flours and regular flours. So this is a Mockmill, and this is a stone mill. So you have inside the burrs, and these ones are made of stone. There's different types of home mills on the market. So there's ones that are impact mills that have ceramic burrs, but a stone mill, in my opinion, the stone burrs are the best. So what y'all need to know is Mockmill actually sent me this mill for free in order to review it. And I really didn't think that I needed another mill. I've been grinding my own flour at home for over 5 years. I was really satisfied with the mill that I had. It had ceramic stones. It wasn't a stone one, but I'm like, you know, it grinds its flour just fine. I mean, you put it in and it spits the flour out. How much different can they be? Well, let me tell you, I am so glad I said, yeah, I'll go ahead and try the mill. So they sent it to me. And I tried it, and you guys, I could not believe the difference in using a stone burr mill versus the other ones. The grind that I can get, so you adjust the grind, and you can adjust it super easily through here up to 20 different increments. Now, most of the time, I have mine set, which I do right now, on really fine because I like a fine ground. I do a lot of baking, especially this time of year. Can I get a holler? Anybody else getting your baking on? So predominantly, I keep it on the fine ground, but if I want something that's coarse or I'm doing some different grains, you can adjust it. On my old mill, I only had the ability to adjust it three ways. So it was super coarse, medium, and fine. So being able to adjust it is really important. The other great thing about having stone burrs versus the other ones is they will heat up. So usually it's cast iron or ceramic burrs, and they will get really hot. And so the flour gets really hot, and a lot of people think that can damage the nutrients when it gets really hot in the flour. So with the stone burrs, if you have it set to the really, really fine ground, which I'm going to show you in just a minute for the flour, it's going to get a little bit warm because the burrs are as close together as they can be, and it causes a little bit more friction, but it stays relatively cool in comparison to the other mills. So it's really fabulous. So one of the great things is the Mockmill is just one complete unit, and it's actually only 6 by 6 inches. So you can see this is not a huge footprint as far as storage wise on the counter. So I've already got it plugged in. and you've got the chute here, you put it on, and so you just flip the switch. It's really quiet. My other mill was like having a huge old vacuum cleaner going. This one's relatively quiet. So this is how fast it is to grind your own flour. Flip it on, you got it, and you just pour these into the flour, and it's gonna grind it. So you can actually hopefully hear me over this, but it just shoots the flour out right here into the bowl. You just put it down there. So there we go. So I've got my flour here, you guys, and I'm hoping it'll see, but look at how fine that is. Look at how fine that is. That is super, super fine for whole wheat flour. And that includes all of the nutrients, everything in there. And you saw how fast that was. So this is probably about 1.5 cups, almost 2 cups worth of flour. So it's really quick. So I know a lot of times people think grinding your own flour is going to take a ton of time. It really doesn't. It's super fast. So with your fresh ground flour, though, I just grind it up as I need it. So I just leave this sitting on the counter. Here's a little cover so you don't get dust and stuff down inside the hopper where you're grinding. I'm going to unplug it so I can scooch it over to the side here. But the benefit is the wheat berries, these will store forever. I mean, you can get up to 20 years worth of storage of a wheat berry. So I buy mine in bulk, and then I just keep them in the pantry, and then I can grind them up. So with the fresh ground flour, I just grind up as much as I need for whatever I'm baking the recipe for. So it's really fresh, and I don't store it. If you were to grind too much, you can store fresh ground flour. You can put it in the freezer. So you can put it in a, seal it up in an airtight container and store it in the freezer. And that's going to gradually slow a little bit the breakdown and keep it a little bit fresher longer. With the freezing temperatures. The other option is then just to leave it, in the counter on the bowl and use it within the next day or two, just knowing that the longer it's set out and fresh, it's going to lose some of the nutrients. Usually about up to 2 weeks is how long people will store fresh flour. But like I said, my goal is to kind of only grind enough that I need for just doing that specific recipe so that it's always super fresh and we're getting all of those tens of thousands of nutrients right there in our fresh flour. It's pretty awesome. This mill is really amazing. Like I said, it is so much more quiet and more efficient than my other mill. But it's not just for grinding flour. So like I said, this is spelt flour. You can do a lot with this mill, you guys. So this is buckwheat. So you can do gluten-free flour. If you need to be dedicated gluten-free, you can do rice flour. Basically, you can grind up anything that's not a really oily seed, because if it's really oily, you cannot do coffee, you can't do almond, and you can't do coconut, because those are high concentrations of oils within those products, and they gum up and they create a paste on the burrs, so it just won't grind anymore. You can take it apart. Actually, that's one of the benefits of this mill. You can actually take it apart and you could clean the burrs off if you did try to grind something up, because I tend to be one of those people who are like, well, let me just see if I can get away with it and do it. So if you're one of those people and you don't take my word for it and you try it, you can clean it. And then you can put it back together and just run something like rice through it. So you can do rice flour that will help clean off those burrs and do your next batch of flour. So I will read you the list here. Hopefully it will come up on my computer of all of the gluten-free flours that you can grind up with the mill, because I know a lot of people have questions about that. So you can do chickpea flour, buckwheat, which we've got here, quinoa, oat. I use oat flour a lot. Makes fabulous in muffins. I love oat flour and pancakes. Rice flour, millet flour. If you do oil seeds, you need to do it together with some dry grains. Chia flour, sorghum, tapioca, corn, and teff and amaranth flour. So those are all ones that you can do and make up your different blends of your flours, including all of the wheat berries. So you can do all of the different wheat berries that there are and make your flour that way. But, you guys, I think this is so cool. So as a homesteader, I like a tool that does multiple functions for me, right? It needs to work as hard as we do in our kitchens and on our homestead. So not only can you do all of those different grains, but you can do spices. So fresh ground spices, I've got a big old thing of black peppercorn here. You can grind your own spices in here too. And there is nothing flavor-wise like fresh ground spices. So black peppercorn, I know we got holidays coming up and we're gonna do a lot of cooking. Fresh ground spices just are amazing for their flavor. So you do the same thing, you just put that through, and to clean it each time, because we don't always necessarily, if we're going to ground our black peppercorn and then we need some flour for something, we might not want that peppercorn flavor in there. You can also do mustard seeds too. So to clean it, you just take something like rice, a handful of white rice, brown rice. Actually, I got to check on the brown rice if it has too much of an oil content. I think it's fine, but I know white rice for sure. And you just run it through the mill, and that's going to clean it out. And so then you can go in between for your different flavors. Another thing that you can do, can I get a hands up from all of my peeps who do dehydrated vegetables? So if you do dehydrating and you have dehydrated, say, sweet potatoes or different roots vegetables, you can put them through here, you guys, and make your own sweet potato flour. Yeah, how cool is that? So you can grow your flour and then grind it up, and you can add that to things. So this is a really versatile mill and everything that you're able to do with it, which is pretty amazing. So where do you get your grains and where do you get the mill, right? Where do you get all of that? Great questions to have. So if you want to check out the mill, to check that out, go to melissaknorris.com/mockmill, which I'm an affiliate for them. The other cool thing is they have a guide done up for you that you get with your purchase of the mill that shows you all of the places within the United States, farmers, local farmers, you guys, that will ship across the state, where you can get all of your different grains so you can order them directly. Because if you go to like a Whole Food store or a co-op or that type of thing, generally speaking, if you're looking for wheat berries like this in their whole form, you're going to have hard red wheat. You'll usually find red wheat berries. Sometimes you'll find hard white. Maybe you'll find spelt. But when you go to your stores, it's not very likely that you're going to find einkorn and you're going to find spelt and you're going to find all of these different grains, which we really should be using. I mean, there's such diversity that we can get within our flavor and for our nutrition and for our health, especially with the ancient grains. So there's a guide that shows you where you can order all of that. So I order mine einkorn and my spelt. I order all of that online, and they'll be providing you with a whole guide because we really need to know this stuff, right? So go and check that out. And then if you want to read more about all of the different health benefits and all of that fun stuff with grinding, all of the different things that you can grind at home and create into a flour, I've also got the Homesteader's Guide to Home Milling, and you can check that out at melissaknorris.com/flour. So there's lots of resources there for you. So the main benefit, there's lots of benefits, but one is you're actually getting all of the nutrition that is inside of a wheat berry. So store-bought flour, there's 3 parts of a wheat berry. There's the endosperm, there's the bran, and there's the germ. The germ is where the oil is contained, and it's inside of the wheat berry. And then you've got the bran on the outer part, and then you have the endosperm. So when flour is ground up, as we know, oil will turn rancid, right? And so to create a very consistent flour that will stay stable on the shelf for months and months and months and months, they have to take that out. So they remove the bran and they remove the germ, and then you're just left with the endosperm, which is like all-purpose, really white flour. But even if it's whole wheat, they still have to remove the germ because it has to stay shelf stable, and if it's organic. So there's over 10,000 phytochemicals in the endosperm alone, and they only enrich it back with about 3 to 4 vitamins. So whenever you look at anything, it says enriched with flour. So you are missing out on major natural vitamins, and so it's enriched back with different vitamins, but not from its natural source. So we know if we take a multivitamin and then we eat a bowl of broccoli, our body really knows how to utilize the vitamins when they're coming from our food in a natural source versus if you're just taking a vitamin. So that's a little bit of the difference, but there's such a vast variety of, like I said, of those phytochemicals and those nutrients that are naturally within that wheat berry that's removed, that there's no way that we are putting them all back into our flour. And it's really fresh, which is another benefit because you've got this old flour, who knows how long ago it's been milled, and it's been sitting on this store shelf forever and then shipped to you. So those are the major health benefits. And then of course you're keeping the bran in there, so you've got more of the fiber and more of the flavor profile too, which we don't necessarily think of flavor as necessarily being healthy. But here's what I got to say about that. I don't care how healthy something is for me. If it tastes if it doesn't taste very good, I'm not going to eat it. At least not on a consistent basis. And neither is my family. So we kind of joke and say we have this rule around the house. But I'm always trying to swap things out for less processed and more natural and healthier whole food versions, right? Is that kind of if you're the mom and that's your role in your family, maybe the dad doing that. But that's the role in our family. And here's what my husband and kids had to say about it. They're only going to do it if it tastes as good or better with what I'm replacing it with. So it has to taste good or they're just not going to eat it, and it's just going to be a fight every time I try to get them to eat it. So swapping out the flour to fresh ground is a really, really easy win, and I'm getting a much more better nutrition and the flavor. Like I said, the flavor, you guys, the flavor is so much different when you're making all of your different things. So to me, spelt kind of has a delicate, a little bit of a nutty flavor, and you'll notice as you use, like, think about if you're doing rye. Not everybody likes rye, but if you're doing rye and those different breads and you're getting all of that flavor, you just don't experience that with store-bought flour. You don't experience it as you do with fresh. So those are all of the different, there's lots of different benefits there to the health benefits of doing the fresh ground flour versus the store-bought. I can't wait to see what you guys grind up first, what becomes your favorite flours, and all of your awesome fresh flour baking. So if you learned something new in this, I would love for you to type and let me know in the comments if you learned something new, and also to share this with other people, because this is information that even being at Whole Foods and grinding my own flour for years, I did not know that there was that much of a difference nutritional wise between the fresh ground flour and the store-bought flour. Pretty amazing. So guys, have a fabulous day.